Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Luke Mardigian, and you are listening to Be Insured, a show where we discuss a variety of topics related to insurance, business, and leadership so you can stay protected while growing a thriving business. Today, I have a very exciting announcement. Most of you have gotten to know Eric Gestring quite a bit. These past 2 months of shows, he's been featured on pretty much every one of them as a guest, and it's my pleasure to officially introduce him as my co-host of Be Insured radio show.
Woo-woo.
Eric, I'm grateful to have you by my side during these. It's a pleasure to have you here. Eric's been a close friend for darn near a decade, a big part of our agency. I know that the Mardigian Agency wouldn't be where it is without his help, and now this show is not going to be the same.
Oh, shucks.
Thank you. It might have been in a bad way. All right. Well, let's bring some valuable content to our listeners. We're going to get really personal today. Eric and I both felt like great use of this show as a way to get to know both of us is to hear a little bit more about why we're in the insurance industry and how we got here and our hearts behind the why we became insurance agents and why we are so passionate about life insurance. Many of you know that both Eric and I lost our fathers at a young age, far too soon. And firsthand, we saw what it looks like to not have enough life insurance or not have any life insurance at all. So we want to share those stories with you and hope that you can take some valuable lessons away and start taking care of your family the way you need to be, because I know you're listening. And if you're still tuned in after I said the word life insurance, it's because you know that this is for you.
There's a need. So what is the stat on people that know that they need life insurance that don't have it? Isn't it pretty astounding?
It's pretty, let's say somewhere in the 60 or 70% range, like 60-some% of society knows they need life insurance but don't have any. And typically that's followed by the statistic where most people think that life insurance costs more than it actually does.
Do you think that that might be because of GoFundMes and stuff like that? Do you think people are like, well, I'm fine, I can just start a GoFundMe?
Yeah, well, hope don't float, right?
Right.
Yeah, you're hoping that people show up and pay for you. And I just caught up with an old classmate on Facebook whose husband was in a tragic accident, and they started a GoFundMe. And unfortunately, not many people are given to it. It's
not anymore.
You're really hoping that those who are close to you or know of you are willing to donate money, but that's just kind of become it's just a thing of the past, really.
Also, I think people that have the funds available and could help probably look at it like, why did you not plan for your worst day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you have life insurance, it's you probably get it better than most, but it's still hard to donate to something that could have been avoided.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
It's not like you don't know that you're going to die. Last I checked, it was 10 out of 10 people die on Earth, and given that information, you have to plan for it. Now, whether it's when you're 19 or 99, you don't have control over that day or time that you pass from this life.
Yep.
But you do have control of what you leave behind.
100%.
So I'll begin with my story.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'd like you to share your story first.
So I was 18 years old. It was a week before I graduated high school. And I was in a busy rush to go to some graduation event. And my dad was home. I forgot something. So I told him goodbye, I love you, as I ran out the door like a typical teenager and realized I forgot something, turned back around, ran back inside, grabbed the item, and thank God I took the time to stop, give him a big hug, tell him I loved him and that I'd see him soon. And he said, I love you, see you soon. And I walked out the door, and that was the last time anyone heard him alive. He ended up having a massive heart attack about an hour later while he's out for a run. Now, when you think about that, he was in phenomenal shape. 6-pack abs, 6% body fat. He had done a number of all-natural bodybuilding shows, so he's like 185 pounds. He's not, a giant. He's lean. He's mean. Most people look at him and say, that guy's not dying anytime soon. But we did have some precursors to it. So I'll kind of start with the end here. So after he passed away, at the time, my dad was making more money than he ever made in our my entire life. We grew up kind of like lower class, lower middle class for most of my life. We weren't poor by any means, but I didn't take a vacation with my family until I was 16, and it was 2 hours away. And that was the only vacation I ever took with my family because there just wasn't money. And I think most people can identify with that growing up. But in the last 4 years before he died, he ended up making double what he used to make. So suddenly we have this solid income that allows us to take a trip. And now that 6-figure income is gone. And at the time, my mom's working full time at Blue Cross Blue Shield. She's in claims and she makes okay money, but not enough, not 6 figures.
To support the family.
They're living on both incomes.
Yep.
And so suddenly we found ourselves going from, high 100,000s of income to 40 or 50,000 a year. He had life insurance. He had $300,000 in life insurance. So just do the math on that, audience. If you make $100,000 a year and you owe $100,000 on your mortgage, how long would $300,000 last you? You'd pay off the mortgage, and you have $100,000 year one, $100,000 year two, and then
hopefully you're making enough after that.
The money's gone.
Yep.
So you either have to adjust or...
And everybody goes, when we have the discussion, they're always like, that seems like a lot of money.
Yeah, you tell them $750,000 in coverage, and they're making $150 a year. It's like, that's only like 5 or 6 years of income, not including paying off your house, not including paying for,
if you want to pay for college, yeah.
Yeah, and not everybody does, right? And that's okay too, but it's legacy. You want to leave something on that people will remember you by. And so that's how it ended, and it changed a lot for me. Rather than putting in applications for school, I put in applications for jobs. I worked, I stayed home. I didn't go to play any sports in college or study out of state. I had to stay home. I was the only one home at the time, so I had to take care of Mom. And it just dramatically changed the outcome of my life. And that's what really drove me into the business, because the front end story, and if you can believe it, I just heard this. My mom just told me this story recently, and I didn't know it. It's been 15, 20 years since he passed, and I just found this out. So the story goes, they applied for their insurance online, and she said it was because it was in a really busy season, and they were watching the budget, even though he was making more money. And she didn't want to spend too much, so she just jumped online because it was quick and easy. And the paramedic came out and drew blood, and they didn't hear anything. They didn't have a point of contact. There was no agent to call. Well, it turned out that 6 months later, and she said it was just the business of life. She just didn't realize how much time had passed. 6 months later, she found out that the blood work was, they lost it.
Which happens.
It happened. Yeah, we probably have 1 or 2 a year.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty fair. I mean, you don't know if it gets lost in the mail, lost by the paramedic, lost by lab. You don't know where it gets lost at, but it happens every once in a while. But without an agent following it, so that's why we have a system in our agency, and most agencies do, where we track that policy and we give updates on a weekly basis.
That's the added value. So
6 months later, he gets his blood drawn again, and he ended up being declined. So my mom knew, her advice to the listener, she said, tell people that if they have a gut feeling that they need more life insurance, to do it and get it done quickly with an agent. Because going online, there's just too many balls that could get dropped, and there's nobody looking it over.
No one's explaining exactly how the policy's built to them. It's typically bare bones.
Yeah, I just had one relative reached out to me because of some health concerns, and they said, what's my life insurance pay for? And it was accidental death and dismemberment, meaning that they had to die in a car accident. A truck had to fall on them from the sky, a meteor had to hit them while they're walking out of the house, or they had to get some limb chopped off before it ever paid anything. Those are all terrible ways to go. But he happens to be sick. So he's paying on a policy that he'll never have. Funny enough, a week later, my brother texts me and says, hey, this is being offered through my credit union. Should I buy it? And he texts me a picture of an accidental death and dismemberment policy, which those have their place. But generally speaking, it's not much more just to get coverage for all of life's events, no matter what the cause of death.
Yep.
So my mom said, and this is my advice to the listeners, work with an agent. If you have a gut feeling that you need life insurance, get it done now. And you never know what's around the corner. For my dad, it was heart failure. But we didn't know that 6 months prior. My mom just had a gut feeling that they needed more life insurance. She felt insecure in that moment that, hey, what if he's gone? I can't make it on my own. It's basic arithmetic, right?
Yep.
So, thank God he had that other policy, but in the end,
wasn't enough.
It just was not enough for our lives. And that's why we're in the business, because there was no agent there to tell my dad how much life insurance he needed, what the process looks like, and then following through with it and kind of holding your hand through the process to make sure that coverage goes in place. And what's even crazier is, okay, so if he made 100, let's just say he made like 110, 120 a year. They were looking at getting $500,000 of coverage for $100 a month. That's 1% of his income. And they were like on the fence about it. And so our listeners who are out there going, I'd rather have the ATV than life insurance.
I'd rather go on more vacations.
I'd rather eat pizza every Friday or go out. It doesn't take much to just make sure that your family is financially secure. And man, the price is really high if you don't have life insurance coverage.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. So I'll get into my dad's story. So it was 2015, and it was May when Dad was diagnosed. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 ureteral cancer, which is similar to bladder cancer. It's the cells in the ureter. And it was everywhere. Obviously, it was stage 4. So slim pickings. My father chose that he was going to fight it and did chemo and went through as much as he could. And
during that time, if I remember, you ended up quitting your job. You were there every day in the hospital with him, helping him, taking care of him, driving him to appointments. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. And it's a huge sacrifice, but you got to do that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
It got me behind, obviously. As far as bills, I ended up in a pretty bad situation after he passed. As far as financially, it got me into debt, and I lost my house, my vehicle. Pretty much everything was gone.
And why is that?
So typically when you get life insurance through your work, it's bare bones, like we just talked about, with accidental death.
Or best case scenario, it's life insurance for you while you're employed.
Yes.
Well,
and you can't take it with you.
But
right?
both your dad and my cousin Katie were both dealing with cancers. Were sick long enough that
they were deemed non-employed by their company.
Yes, they're basically let go because they're not showing up and they can't work.
Yep. So at that point, the life insurance that my dad had was null and void. So I had no help with life insurance. So I see the pain that it caused you having a little bit, and then I see how much even worse it is when you have nothing. I mean, just the renting a casket and having my dad cremated and the service, it was over $25,000.
Yeah, and that's interesting.
Crazy.
That's interesting because a lot of our clients will say, "Well, I'll just get cremated. It costs $150." Just not realizing that
that's not true.
And maybe you just want to be cremated and your ashes thrown in the trash, but your family doesn't.
And also, I think it's against state statute to spread ashes. Just so you know, I think it's a crime in the state of Michigan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
all right.
So be aware.
Keeping your life insured and keeping you out of jail.
Yeah.
Also, Eric, thanks so much for sharing your story. There you have it, folks. If you're listening to this and you don't have a life insurance plan or a very good one, or if you're not sure if you have enough coverage in place, we'd love to talk. Just message us on Facebook or Instagram. It's at the Mardigian Agency. You spell Mardigian Mardigian. And we can get the conversation started. What most people don't realize is that typically a 15-minute conversation can get you a good idea of where to go and what to do. And most insurance agents, because we've talked about this in the past, aren't going to sell you something that you don't need.
I agree.
It's unethical and illegal, and that's what they should be doing, is advising you.
And something's better than nothing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Even if you can't afford the full coverage that you really need, buy what you can, because that at least bought my mom 2 years compared to, you went $40,000, $50,000 in debt as a result. So that's a much better outcome.
Amen.
All right. Thank you for listening to today's conversation. And I want to give big thanks to my co-host, Eric, for being open with us today and sharing his dad's story. It can be tough to talk about life insurance policies. None of us want to think about dying, but it's also a great reminder for us all to be prepared for the future and continue that vow to our family that we'd be there for them even after we've passed away. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Be Insured.